we are going to use a very innovative way of asking questions and going through them, which is called Weassembly. It's basically an internet online app. And if you look at the screen right now, if you have a cell phone or a tablet or anything, you can type www.weassembly.com, and then it will ask you for a password, which is right, just like you see right now in the screen. The beauty of this is that you will be able to type in questions in your cell phone or your device, and then you can also like questions. So if you see there is a question there you really find interesting and important, you can like it, and then at the end of the session, when we get into the questions, we will have a list of questions which are rated, and then we will work ourselves through from the top to the bottom. We'll see how far we get. So please, you can just type in right now in your cell phones, and then whenever you have a question, just type it in. So I have a very short time to introduce the session, which is basically divided in 3 parts. The first part will be an introduction by Mr. Bernhard Wurm. He's from the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the federal ministry here in Germany. And he's senior policy advisor at the ministry, and he will give us a short impulse from the side of the German cooperation. After that, we will move to a keynote speech by Anne Larsen, and then we will move into country cases. At the end, the last part, the third part, is questions and answers. So that will be our structure today. So before we get into the keynote, I would like to call Mr. Wurm to take the podium and give us his impulse from the side of German cooperation. Mr. Wurm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear participants and guests, we are facing tremendous times: loss of biodiversity, increasingly volatile weather, and impacts on climate change. We can feel and see the significant negative impacts on livelihoods all around the world. Many ecosystems have been degraded. Over the last 2 decades, approximately 20% of Earth's vegetated surface showed declining productivity, mainly because of unsustainable resource use and land management practices. Furthermore, forest loss is still very high, with net losses of around 7.6 million hectares per year, according to FAO. These widespread phenomena show that governance issues are at the core of unsustainable land and resources use. The fact that 70% of the world population still do not have access to formalized and functioning land administration systems highlights the root causes we are confronted with. Only if people are sure that their land cannot be taken away from them, they will invest in their lands, in their trees, and in their soil. If we want to have significant contributions to the SDGs, to no one is left behind, to zero hunger, to restoration of ecosystems and forest restoration, land ownership and use rights need to be clear and transparent. That means that we all need to define who has the right to use resources, and we also need to define who has the right and responsibilities to protect resources against illegal or unsustainable exploitation. With good land governance, we can foster rule of law, strengthen stability, and build trust. This opens the necessary space for people to engage in sustainable management and restoration of landscapes and make sustainable livelihoods in rural areas possible. Acknowledging these challenges and realizing that action is needed, the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, that's where I'm from, together with our partners, the African Union, WRI, IUCN, and the World Bank, are supporting the AFR 100, the African Forest Landscape Restoration Initiative. Jointly, we are jointly and with many other stakeholders in the partner countries, mainly the governments, we are working to implement the commitments of 113 million hectares land, forests and tree-rich landscapes by 2030. Also, the Bonn Challenge and the New York Declaration on Forests commit 350 million hectares of forests and landscapes to be restored by 2030. Yet, to be successful and to have systemic and sustainable impacts, our efforts need to link landscape restoration and secure tenure rights. We all know significant challenges lie ahead, and today we have the possibility to talk about that. With our global project on responsible land governance of the Special Unit One World No Hunger, the German government supports efforts to secure land rights in Madagascar, Benin, Uganda, Ethiopia, Peru, and Laos. Another example, further with the project for the protection of sustainable management of indigenous land in Brazil, we prepare the ground for sustainable management of forest, lands, soil, and strengthen the rights of indigenous communities. We hope that in close cooperation with our national and international partners, these efforts have lasting impact. But let me come to an end and conclude that we all agree, I guess, that sustainable and inclusive development needs legal security of land tenure and the use of natural resources. In addition, we have plenty of approaches, experiences at our hands, and we have many great opportunities to learn from each other. And good land and resources governance must be adapted to local contexts. So let us use this opportunity today to learn from each other, share experiences, and find ways to enable people to strengthen their land rights and engage in landscape restoration for a sustainable future. Thank you very much, and yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Worm. I think it's quite remarkable, the engagement of BMZ. I'm not saying only this because I'm from GIZ, but I really, working in a country where there is actually quite an engagement, I must say, is remarkable. So the topic of our discussion today is the challenges in implementing a rights-based approach for sustainable management and restoration of landscapes and forests. And Anne Larsen has a very important task to talk to us about recent research, particularly regarding the topic of rights in the landscape, who participates. So Anne has lived she's a principal scientist and the leader of the Equity, Gender, and Tenure team at CIFOR. She has lived in Latin America for 30 years and conducts research on multiple aspects of forest and landscape governance, policy, and institutions from local to international scales. So Anne, the podium is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for all of you for coming today. So this is really a panel about, or a side event about the intersection of landscape approaches and tenure rights, or rights-based approaches. So given the importance of land use, and land use change in any landscape approach, who owns the land, who controls access to resources, these are central questions. I think there are two key issues here. When I think about the features of landscape approaches, one of the central elements is the emphasis of taking on a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder approach. So there's both a tenure element on the one hand and a participation element on the other. So I'm going to talk about research very quickly, I don't have a lot of time, on both of these topics, very briefly on multi-stakeholder approaches and on tenure, security, and livelihoods, and I'm going to close with just a few challenges. So multi-stakeholder approaches. Over the last year, my team has been studying multi-stakeholder forums in 4 different countries, and we've also been looking at this in the literature. So as everyone seems to be turning to this idea that bringing multiple actors together is part of the key part of the solution to these land issues that we're facing around climate and landscapes. So from the literature, we wanted to see what we could learn from past experience. So we conducted what's called a realist synthesis review of academic literature on multi-stakeholder processes. I won't go into methods for the lack of time, but I'm happy to talk about that afterwards. But the idea of a realist synthesis is to systematically select the best literature, then study how context affects the outcomes. So in this case, we wanted to know how issues of governance, power relations, history, and so on affect the outcomes of these multi-stakeholder initiatives. So we started with about 1,000 articles, and through this systematic approach, we thinned them down to 17 articles and 19 case studies. So we had intended to study context, and we did pull that out of the literature, but something else actually jumped out at us. It wasn't the context itself that seemed to be having the biggest effect on outcomes. It was really about how the project or initiative engaged with context. So the findings suggested that the most successful multi-stakeholder processes were those that were committed to engaging with multiple actors at multiple levels over time. They identified the barriers, they built capacity, they built political will, thus supporting the creation of an enabling environment. And they were designed as adaptive learning processes. So they weren't about developing a blueprint approach. It wasn't even about how to develop a design that better engages in specific contexts. It was really about designing for engagement to address the context, whatever its distinct features. And that means engaging local people, being open and willing to change the initiative based on that engagement. So the key message from this part is that landscape approaches are more likely to be successful if they engage broadly and deeply and are committed to adapting and changing based on learning from that engagement. So tenure rights. Local people should be engaged in any initiative that's going to affect them, but they're harder to ignore and likely to have more control over resources and outcomes if they also have secure tenure rights. I think we all agree on this. So I just want to focus on two specific points. The results here are based on surveys with about 2,700 men and women from half as many households in 54 communities in a comparative study we carried out in Peru, Indonesia, and Uganda. We looked at titled villages, ones that had full land title as collective communities. We looked at villages that had formalized use rights, so not full property ownership, but a right for a certain period of time, and at customary villages that didn't have recognition or title. Within each of these categories, there are many, many differences, but these were sort of the basic classifications. So first of all, it's important to remember that a lot of the benefits associated with titling or formalizing rights aren't directly associated with having a piece of paper. They're associated with increasing tenure security. So we found that formalizing rights in any form was likely to be perceived as improving tenure security, but it wasn't always true. For example, it has to be better than what was there before. So a really well-organized, well-governed customary community that can fight for its rights and defend its borders may not be better off with the rights recognized, or they may not see that as a better option, because they don't feel like they need it. A land title that's poorly done can make people worse off. In one customary village in Uganda, people said they thought that a title might make elite capture easier. So this is one of the cases where people didn't see the title as better than what they have now. This is also true if the area formalized is less than the area claimed, or a lot less in particular, or if they're granted a right that's weaker than the one they believe they're entitled to. This was a case in Indonesia where one of the communities believed they had a historic ancestral right and should have a full title, but they were only given the use right. It's also problematic if formalization forces problematic changes to customary governance systems. So I'm not saying rights shouldn't be formalized at all. I'm trying to point out that it's a very complicated process, and we shouldn't take it for granted. It has to be done right, and tenure security doesn't depend on the title alone, but on all of these other factors. So the second issue I want to talk about is livelihoods. And this pertains to a question around this panel, which is what are kind of the additional incentives or other things that are needed for successful landscape management or restoration aside from rights? So in almost all of the formal sites that we studied, on average, people reported improvements in income, livelihoods, and food security over time relative to customary villages. So if you look at the graphic here, the arrows point to one titled area and two areas that had been given use rights, and the green shows that they saw that food security had improved at a percentage higher than in the customary villages. So in almost all of the areas where rights were formalized, people saw themselves as somewhat better off. However, there's still some real concerns around food security in these villages. So the different colors represent the portions of the year during which people had some kind of trouble feeding their families over the last year. So though generally this does appear to be a bit worse in the customary villages, we still see that between 40% to 60% of people in formalized villages were still having trouble feeding their families for at least some part of the year. And that's a serious concern. In our interviews with government implementers of forest tenure reforms, there were large differences in responses regarding government responsibility, how they saw their responsibility on this topic. So whereas 60% of government officials in Uganda considered improving livelihoods benefits as an objective of tenure reforms, 46% believe so in Indonesia, but only 12% in Peru. Focus groups from the villages also demonstrated broad concern over livelihoods. In land owned by communities, 53% of the focus groups expressed concerns, and in land with community rights, 61% reported livelihoods concerns. So what else is needed for long-term sustainability? More attention needs to be paid to these issues of livelihoods, well-being, and income. So Indigenous peoples and local communities need secure tenure, which includes secure livelihoods, and they need to be able to fully engage or participate as rights holders. So I'm just going to close with a few challenges. You're going to hear a lot of the challenges, I think, from the people who present right after me, so I'll just stick to a few. Land use planning, expert approaches, restoration, these are sometimes, maybe often, top-down exercises based on a particular framing of the problem. This includes failing to see customary systems and institutions, and a desire to apply these blueprints that I mentioned earlier as solutions to problems understood by the experts. It's also a concern when we start to talk about urgent problems, urgent solutions to climate change, because the multi-stakeholder approach that we found to be so successful around adaptive learning, it takes time. Second, even when policymakers or practitioners recognize rights as a problem, they often remain unresolved. So C4 colleagues recently did a review of restoration initiatives following the Restoration Opportunities Assessment Methodology, ROAM. Some of you may know of it. This method provides guidance that encourages practitioners to incorporate tenure and governance considerations likely to affect forest landscape restoration. So although all of the reports reviewed identified the lack of rights or weak rights as a problem, none of them provided a robust analysis of the problems or solutions for addressing them. So we've known this is a problem for a while. This has come up in discussions today already, right? This has been a problem we've been hearing about for years, but we still aren't finding the solutions. Third, I can't emphasize enough the important role of government. The choices that the government makes can make or break commitments to tenure security, livelihoods, and participation. Fourth, there's often resistance to rights recognition, more so for Indigenous peoples than other rural populations, so alliances, networks, organizing for collective action is essential. And finally, women face additional layers of challenges in all of these arenas. I'm just going to show one quick slide from our own research looking at the legal frameworks in the 3 countries we studied, and the green is where things are pretty good. So the red still shows that there's enormous problems in terms of finding laws supporting gender equity on forests. And that's just one of many, many ways of looking at this question. But that's all I have time for today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Anne. For the people who came late, we are using today a tool for asking questions. It's called Wisembly. I already checked in my phone, and there is one question so far. So if you have not logged in, please use www.wisembly.com, and you put the password right, and then you can enter your questions, and then also you can like some of the questions, so the question will be rated automatically, and at the end of this session, we'll go through the list that is produced by yourselves. So now we're going to move to the second part, which is where we're going to dive deeper into country cases. And for that, we as organizers of the panel, we asked our speakers to concentrate on 3 questions. Not all of them will cover all these questions, but at least one of them. And these questions were, how can landscape approaches and tenure rights come together in practice? What role do different forms of tenure rights play? That would be the first one. The second was, what additional incentives are necessary to create a successful dynamic for sustainable landscape management and landscape restoration? And the third was, what specific challenges arise for Indigenous peoples and local communities in landscape approaches and for Indigenous women in particular? So now I have the pleasure to introduce to you our 4 speakers from the countries. The first one I will call to sit here in the front is Madame Danielle Haingona-Valona. Did I say it right? I hope so. From Madagascar. And she's currently working as coordinator of the Land Reform Coordination and Monitoring Unit at the Ministry of Land Development, Housing and Public Works. She has strong experience in the development and implementation of the Malagasy land reform, including the implementation of the decentralized land management as head of support service to the land offices and director of support to the decentralized land management. Welcome. Second, we will have Dr. Tesfaye Kumsa. He's invited as a representative of the Ethiopian private sector. He's the CEO at Ano Agro Industry from the Oromia region. The company works together with local communities on sustainable land management. Coffee is produced, knowledge is transferred, and water and forest reserves are established. Mr. Kumsa has participated in similar events several times. He has a lot of experience in these kind of discussions. The third one I would call is Mr. Hermeto Tuesta Cerrón from Peru. He is a Peruvian indigenous GIS specialist working with the Instituto del Bien Común since 1998 on supporting rural communities, especially indigenous peoples, and in the Peruvian Amazon region, in the sustainable management of their collective territories. Welcome to the panel. And the fourth, last but not least, is Sonia Guajajara. And she's among the most prominent indigenous leaders of Brazil. For many years, she has been on the forefront of the country's indigenous and environmental movement. Her work against deforestation and land grabbing in indigenous territories on the national level has brought her international attention. She coordinates Brazil's biggest indigenous organization, which is called the Articulation of Indigenous Peoples of Brazil, APIB. Welcome, Sonia. So, with no further ado, I would call Madame Danielle to give her input on how to deal with tenure pluralism for landscape restoration. Madame Danielle will be speaking in French, so please put on the headphones, if you will. Madame Danielle, please use the podium.
Bonjour à tous. Pour Madagascar, on va présenter le pluralisme des régimes fonciers pour la restauration des paysages à Madagascar. Pour le système foncier malgache, on a engagé la réforme foncière en 2005 et cette réforme a été consolidée en 2015. Notre système foncier est basé sur deux systèmes, la déconcentration et la décentralisation de la gestion foncière. Il y a donc 2 formes de sécurisation foncière à Madagascar, avec 2 types de preuves de droit de propriété, c'est-à-dire le titre foncier et le certificat foncier. Pour l'obtention de ces titres ou certificats fonciers, on a déterminé 4 types de terrains qui existent à Madagascar, et c'est prévu dans une loi. Tout d'abord, il y a les domaines de l'État, qui inclut les domaines publics et les domaines privés de l'État, et les propriétés privées titrées. Avec ces 2 statuts, il y a la gestion du titre foncier, et ce sont les services de l'État, services fonciers de l'État au niveau des districts, qui gèrent et qui délivrent le titre foncier. Il y a un nouvel élément sur les types de terrains, la propriété privée non titrée et occupée, c'est-à-dire les terrains au niveau local, avec quoi on peut avoir un certificat foncier. C'est une nouvelle forme de reconnaissance juridique de l'occupation. Et ces certificats fonciers sont délivrés par les communes par le biais des guichets fonciers. Et le dernier type de terrain qui existe à Madagascar, c'est les terrains à statut spécifique. Pour les terrains à statut spécifique, il s'agit de tous les terrains qui sont constitutifs des zones réservées pour les différents projets d'investissement. Il concerne également tout ce qui est aires protégées, tout ce qui entre dans le cadre de la gestion des ressources naturelles, de tous les terrains classés dans les zones protégées, relevant du droit forestier, et enfin tous les terrains à usage collectif, de tenure collective traditionnelle au niveau communautaire. Voilà les 4 grands types de terrains qui existent à Madagascar comme expérience sur la complémentarité de la gestion durable et ressources et restauration des paysages forêts et sécurisation foncière. Déjà, l'État s'est engagé sur la mise en œuvre d'une réforme en 2005 et consolidée en 2015, comme j'ai dit tout à l'heure. On a ciblé la population locale avec leurs occupations afin de leur sécuriser. On a engagé donc à la sécurisation de ces occupations locales avec la certification foncière. Il y a 2 types de droits fonciers qui existent à Madagascar. Le droit foncier individuel qui est assuré par la sécurisation des occupations avec la délivrance de certificats fonciers, justement qui est conditionné au préalable avec l'existence de l'occupation. Et après l'obtention du certificat foncier, il y a une exigence légale comme quoi on doit continuer cette mise en valeur, cette occupation, sinon il y aura un abus de droit de propriété et il se peut que le détenteur du certificat foncier sera dépourvu de son droit à défaut de cette mise en valeur. Pour les droits fonciers communautaires, on n'a pas encore le cadre légal concernant la sécurisation des droits fonciers communautaires, mais Madagascar s'est engagé à un processus visant à élaborer, adopter les lois sur la statut spécifique qui n'est pas encore adoptée jusqu'à actuellement. Donc, on a engagé le processus. Dernièrement, en juin 2019, on a organisé un atelier international avec 17 pays africains qui vise justement à protéger les droits fonciers communautaires. Quels sont les défis par rapport à la restauration des paysages et forêts et la gestion durable? Sur le plan stratégique, déjà, Madagascar a adopté la politique foncière en 2015. L'objectif visait de faire le foncier en tant que levier de développement, un socle de toutes les activités de développement économique et social, avec finalité par rapport à la restauration des paysages et des forêts, à tout ce qui est extension de l'agriculture familiale, à la valorisation durable et respect des ressources naturelles renouvelables, à la gestion rationnée des ressources naturelles renouvelables et enfin à la valorisation de la terre. Sur le plan juridique, on va s'engager sur l'adoption de la loi sur les aires à statut spécifique qui détermine justement tout ce qui est droit foncier communautaire et tout ce qui est gestion et protection des aires à statut spécifique, par exemple tout ce qui est domaine forestier national, les aires de reboisement. Et parallèlement à cela, Madagascar s'est engagé d'ici 2030 à restaurer 4 millions d'hectares. C'est la part de Madagascar par rapport à ce qu'a dit le BMZ tout à l'heure. Et enfin, sur le plan technique, le défi de Madagascar actuellement, c'est on est en train d'expérimenter une nouvelle approche, c'est-à-dire l'inventaire parcellaire stratifié et la sécurisation foncière. Après l'inventaire, donc, avec la délivrance d'un procès-verbal d'inventaire parcellaire, on va accélérer le processus de la sécurisation foncière avec le certificat foncier. C'est une expérimentation qui est engagée dans le cadre de la collaboration d'un projet ProPFR avec la BMZ. Et sur le plan technique, enfin, on entend renforcer justement les guichets fonciers communaux qui délivrent les certificats fonciers sur le plan concernant l'amélioration de leur fonctionnement en général. Voilà en grande ligne les défis de Madagascar en lien avec la restauration des paysages et des forêts. Sur ce, mesdames et messieurs, je vous remercie.
Thank you. Excellent timing, by the way. So our next presenter is Dr. Tesfaye Kumsa, and he will be speaking about adopting a landscape approach as business case to mitigate the impacts of agricultural production and to deliver on environmental and social commitments.
Thank you, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to thank the organizing group to invite me to share what our company is doing in terms of sustainable land use in Ethiopia. Like it is introduced already, Ano Agroindustry is a commercial private farm located in the western part of Addis Ababa, about 50 kilometers west of Addis. This company is a seed producing company, actually dwelling on seed hybrid of hybrid maize, teff, soybean and haricot bean, and also in some livestock activities as milk producer and a marketer, beef, and some honey products. It is also engaged in exploiting complementarity of crop livestock production in that part of the world to promote sustainable agriculture in good agricultural practices. Sustainable land use and sustainable land planning is an essential component of our company's business in promoting both crop and livestock production. We also transfer knowledge in terms of training, in terms of conducting demo plots for training farmers. We also organize field days annually to demonstrate what we are doing to the community around, and we also deliver lectures for other commercial farms that are not exercising good and sustainable land use, and we also host experience sharing groups from universities, from other parts of the country, to look at particularly the sustainable management of commercial farming. We also create jobs for the poor farmers living around us, both in creating permanent opportunities and as well as wage opportunities. Actually, we put emphasis on employing women for various reasons that at the time will not allow to go into detail, but 80%, more than 80% of our wage laborers and about 40% of the permanent laborers are women. We annually distribute and enrich about 50,000 households in terms of obtaining, receiving improved fields of the seeds of the crop I've referred to already. And by doing, we contribute to the food security of those 50,000 households. The main landscape activities of the companies are watershed protection measures, like field crop terracing with vetiver grass. Also, we are engaged in agroforestry systems, where we incorporate our forest lands, about 40 hectares, with coffee, banana, and the mango trees. And this, we think, is adding value to the forest land. We also engage ourselves in soil amelioration techniques like using organic fertilizer by applying manure to the farms. We also use direct application of manure by rotating animal kraal overnight enclosures over the seed. What are some of the motivational methods that need to be given to commercial farms? The first one, I think, through just pointing some 6 points, I will indicate the additional motivational mechanism I think are important to promote commercial farmers to use sustainable land. The first one is to develop and implement an effective national and regional land policy on sustainable land use and land consolidation that govern the commercial farmers operating in the country. Land property rights instead of land use rights should be offered to many commercial farms. Promote sustainable land use practices in investors operating through tax amelioration, tax and certification, and giving some awards that could motivate farmers more to take more practices to secure their land. Ensure full consent and support of the communities and the government before land is allotted to commercial lands, as usually land given to farmers snatched from the community are sources of misunderstanding in most regions of the world. So care has to be taken before land is leased out to commercial farmers. Encourage public-private partnership platforms with regular meetings to ensure good governance at the district levels and the local levels, to settle disputes, to share knowledge, to improve productivity, and adapting upscaling mechanism of good agricultural practices. And finally, strengthen the capacity of the local government to legally protect investors from vandalism, which usually is a common practice in Ethiopia. When land becomes scarce, there is a common phenomenon that the investors are obliged to leave the lands to the local community. And that's not usually ends up in a peaceful manner. It engages a lot of damage and a disaster. That's all I can contribute. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Tesfaye. So I would like to call now our colleague from Peru, Hermeto. Hermeto will talk about titling of native communities in the Peruvian Amazon. Thank you, Hermeto. El verde.
El verde. Buenas tardes con todos. Mi nombre es Hermeto Tuesta. Soy indígena del pueblo Abajún del Perú. Trabajo en una ONG, se llama Instituto del Bien Común. También quiero agradecer a los organizadores por haberme invitado para participar en este evento. La foto que ustedes ven ahí es una foto de mi tierra. Es una zona donde el gobierno peruano ha decretado como una zona de interés nacional para crear una hidroeléctrica. Pero el pueblo Abajún y Wampis de esa zona no vamos a permitir porque es una zona sagrada y estoy seguro que con la ayuda de ustedes tampoco lo vamos a permitir. En el Perú existen dos formas de tenencia de tierra. Uno es la forma individual, ¿no? Y dos es de forma colectiva, que se divide en comunidades nativas y comunidades campesinas. campesinas de la costa y la sierra y en algunos casos de la selva. En el Perú aproximadamente existen 2.000 comunidades nativas, de las cuales 600 comunidades nativas están reconocidas, pero falta su titulación. Mientras estas comunidades nativas están esperando su titulación, están siendo invadidos por terceros. Para titular una comunidad nativa sin problema, CIFOR hizo un estudio donde se tiene que seguir 22 pasos, donde a las comunidades nativas se les exige que se tiene que clasificar su territorio para ver cuál es agrícola y cuál es forestal y cuál es protección. Sin embargo, a las empresas transnacionales, como palma acetera, no les exigen la clasificación de tierras. Eso es una discriminación para los pueblos indígenas. La mayor parte de los planos otorgados por el órgano competente, que es el Estado, no coinciden, el plano no coincide con la realidad del terreno. Por eso muchas veces empiezan a generarse superposiciones, ¿no? Por ejemplo, a consecuencia de esto, hay superposición con bosque de producción permanente, concesiones mineras, concesiones petroleras o invasiones de colonos. En el Perú aproximadamente se han demarcado 13 millones de hectáreas de comunidades nativas, de las cuales el 40% está como propiedad y el 60% está como cesión de uso. O sea, como que le entregan a la comunidad, pero no son dueños de ese espacio. Por ejemplo, hay una comunidad nativa en Nuevo Lamas de Chapaja, el 2% es propiedad, el 98% es cesión en uso, como se dice en Perú, como prestado. El Estado peruano ha hecho un avance muy importante. Ha creado un sistema de información sobre comunidades nativas y campesinas de la Amazonía peruana. Es un buen avance. Ese sistema te permite hacer superposiciones, territorios indígenas, áreas protegidas, concesiones mineras, petroleras, madereras. Pero sin embargo, ese sistema falta actualizar. Como les dije, que no coincide con la realidad. Ustedes pueden ver en la imagen, por ejemplo, esta parte, este es el mapa oficial del Estado. Y esta parte parece libre, pero en realidad no es libre. Esta es una información generada por el Instituto del Bien Común en coordinación y convenio con las organizaciones indígenas en el campo. Toda esta parte no aparece acá. Entonces, ¿eso qué indica? Y el Estado ha sacado un decreto diciendo que esta información oficial es de uso obligatorio. Entonces, si yo fuera un empresario de palma aceitera, diría, según la información oficial, esto está libre, ¿no? Y puede generar conflictos. Entonces, falta actualizar el catastro de comunidades nativas de la Amazonía. Existe una norma que han sacado en el año 2017 para georreferenciar comunidades nativas en el campo para actualizar el catastro. Como dijeron en la mañana en otra sala, existen bonitas normas, pero esa norma tiene 0 presupuesto. Pero sin embargo, están avanzando con nuevas titulaciones, creando más superposición. Este es el mapa del Perú, superpuesto con todo tipo de concesiones, mineras, petroleras, madereras, palmas aceiteras. Debajo de eso están los territorios indígenas. Los pueblos indígenas, cada vez que nos levantamos de dormir en nuestro propio territorio, nos levantamos con una concesión encima. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Hermeto. So our last presentation at country level is by Sonia Guajajara, and Sonia will be talking about Dynamics of Indigenous Land Rights in Brazil, given the current political framework. Sônia, pode, para você. Aí coloquei... Tem um pouco mais de tempo, tem 20 minutos.
Olá. Zanekaruk, Anamauã, Zanekaruk, Água, Zanekaruk, Curã. Traduziu? Eu falei, boa tarde a todas, boa tarde a todos. Falei na minha língua, em Guajajara, que é de origem tupi-guarani. Bom, eu quero agradecer muito por esse momento de estar aqui, né, nesse espaço com diferentes gerações, né, com mulheres, homens, juventude, falando sobre paisagens e também aqui para compartilhar tanto as nossas preocupações enquanto liderança indígena do Brasil, quanto também falar dos nossos desafios atuais, né? Todo mundo sabe que o Brasil vive um momento tenso, um momento grave, né, na conjuntura política, e que nós, povos indígenas, estamos na mira, né, de todos esses ataques da política de governo. E aqui, né, para falar de proteção de paisagens, não tem como não falar dos direitos ambientais, dos direitos territoriais e também dos direitos culturais, porque é exatamente nos direitos culturais que estamos nós indígenas, nós comunidades locais, nós que vivemos e dependemos da terra. E são exatamente esses direitos culturais e territoriais que estão sob ataque no Brasil. Né, com essa conjuntura política, esses ataques afetam não só direitos, mas afetam diretamente a nossa existência, diretamente a nossa vida. Embora estejamos nesse momento difícil, doloroso, nós podemos citar algum avanço em relação à participação e protagonismo das mulheres. Tivemos aí, né, uma eleição em 2018, onde o resultado, né, positivo foi de ter uma mulher indígena eleita, né, a primeira vez na história como deputada federal no Congresso Nacional, que é a indígena Joênio Apixana, do estado de Roraima, na Amazônia brasileira. Tivemos também a eleição da Shirley, do povo Pancará de Pernambuco, eleita pela bancada ativista do PSOL no estado de São Paulo. E ela faz parte desse coletivo de pessoas que se juntou aí para inovar a participação da política. Então, a gente teve esses dois ganhos aí concretos. E tive eu participando de uma chapa presidencial, que também foi a primeira vez na história que uma liderança indígena, né, e principalmente sendo mulher, chega a concorrer esse cargo mais alto, né, na política brasileira, trazendo a pauta indígena e a pauta ambiental para o centro do debate político. Isso, para nós, também foi muito significativo. Bom, os diferentes governos apostam ou investem sempre em plano de desenvolvimento ou de progresso que tem como base a morte das pessoas para limpar o caminho, para passar com esse progresso que tem como matriz a expulsão das pessoas dos seus lugares, o extermínio, né, o deslocamento, a violência. Então, nós indígenas somos o resultado de todo esse processo que vem desde a invasão europeia, a colonização, que foi muito dolorido para nós e que hoje a gente está aqui porque, de fato, nós somos povos muito resistentes. E agora, para enfrentar a política do governo Bolsonaro, mais uma vez, somos resilientes, né, e vamos utilizar de toda a expertise que acumulamos durante esses 518 anos para seguir não só fazendo a resistência, o enfrentamento, mas também articulando com demais atores o nosso projeto de sociedade, o projeto que queremos. Nós não somos obrigados a conviver ou aceitar políticas injustas que continuam matando nossas lideranças, que continuam matando nossos povos. Nós precisamos construir o nosso projeto, não o nosso projeto de futuro, mas o nosso projeto agora. O que queremos da nossa juventude hoje? O que queremos para o futuro das nossas crianças? Nós não podemos terceirizar essa responsabilidade, é responsabilidade nossa. E debates como esse aqui é muito importante para essa troca de experiência e para essa consolidação do projeto que queremos. O Brasil é um país mega diverso, muito diverso. Uma diversidade de diferentes povos, diferentes culturas e diferentes paisagens. Isso deveria ser utilizado pelos governos como uma estratégia para potencializar e valorizar nossas riquezas. Mas não. O projeto dos governos tem como base acabar com todas essas riquezas, acabar com os povos, acabar com as culturas e acabar com essas paisagens. O governo Bolsonaro chega salivando para implementar a sua política genocida. Essa política que mata, que continua expulsando e que tenta roubar a nossa cidadania. Por muitas e muitas vezes, nós, povos indígenas, e nossas ancestrais, tivemos que nos reinventar face a esse sistema tão violento, que tenta sempre destruir nossos ecossistemas, que tenta sempre roubar nossas cosmologias, que tenta escravizar nossos corpos e destruir nossos territórios. A gente sempre se reinventou, mas a cada política adotada por esses governos, nós também reinventamos as nossas estratégias de luta. É assim que nós renovamos os nossos guerreiros e as nossas guerreiras para seguirem na luta. Porque a gente não recuou, a gente não recua e nós não vamos recuar diante de ameaça de qualquer governo. Nós vamos seguir lutando. De um lado, estamos nós, povos indígenas, quilombolas, mulheres, comunidades locais. Do outro lado, estão as máquinas do poder econômico e do poder político, que tentam a qualquer custo facilitar o acesso para a exploração dos recursos naturais. E aí, para isso, vale acabar com tudo quanto é direito. Direitos humanos, direitos ambientais e, principalmente, os direitos da Mãe Terra. Ou seja, eles querem a qualquer custo legalizar essa política de destruição coletiva. E assim destruir todas as paisagens, abrindo espaço para a expansão agrícola, para a expansão pecuária, para a exploração dos minérios e para a exploração das águas. Em 6 meses, o governo Bolsonaro já se consolida como o pior governo de todos os tempos, caracterizado por uma agenda que representa uma tragédia aos direitos humanos e aos direitos do meio ambiente. E o pior que não é somente os direitos que estão em jogo, mas o futuro do planeta. Considerando que a Amazônia é a maior floresta tropical do mundo, que abriga a maior biodiversidade e também o maior reservatório de água doce. Então, considerando toda essa riqueza que é a Amazônia, essa luta para defender os direitos dos povos originários, os direitos humanos no Brasil, deixa de ser uma responsabilidade só nossa. Lutar pelo Brasil hoje é uma responsabilidade mundial. Todos somos responsáveis e temos que ter esse compromisso de lutar em defesa da Amazônia e de lutar em defesa dos povos que lutam hoje em defesa da terra. Porque tudo isso coloca a terra como o principal objeto de disputa. O principal objeto de disputa hoje é a Mãe Terra. E nós precisamos colocar o nosso projeto adiante, defender a Mãe Natureza, defender a Mãe Terra, para assim a gente também evitar a chegar a 1,5 graus que o mundo inteiro conclama. Não adianta só vir fazer os seus discursos e os governos virem para as conferências do clima e apresentar metas, se não conseguem implementar atividades na prática que venham reduzir essas emissões. Estudos comprovam agora que somente no mês de maio o desmatamento no Brasil aumentou 26% na Amazônia. 26% no mês de maio, que já está acima, né, do que foi no mesmo mês no ano passado. Esse 26% corresponde agora a 800 quilômetros quadrados de desmatamento, enquanto que em maio do ano passado eram 634 quilômetros quadrados. E embora não haja nenhuma política efetiva de proteção, né, política pública, os territórios indígenas são os mais preservados. E não são preservados porque há investimento público, são preservados porque nós fazemos isso com o nosso próprio modo de vida, naturalmente, gratuitamente e pagando caro, porque nós pagamos com a vida de nossas lideranças, que seguem criminalizadas, que seguem presas e que seguem assassinadas. Então, nós precisamos fazer com que a sociedade compreenda que, de fato, não existe plano B. Nós temos que lutar hoje pela descentralização do uso da terra. No Brasil, 12,5% do território indígena está na mão de 1%, é nosso, de menos de 1% da população, né, que somos nós indígenas. Mas esse mesmo 1% detém 46% da propriedade privada. E qual é a diferença disso? Que nós indígenas temos o uso coletivo e a propriedade privada é uso individual, é de família, apenas para entregar para os setores do agronegócio, da mineração, da exploração e da destruição. Então, o que está em jogo hoje é a gente buscar essa maior consciência pela forma dos consumos responsáveis, lutar pela reforma agrária, agricultura familiar, a demarcação de terras indígenas e regularização de territórios quilombolas. A luta pela Mãe Terra é a mãe de todas as lutas. Obrigada.
Thank you. Thank you very much to all the panelists. So now is the moment of truth. Marcela, let's see. We have actually half an hour, but 25 minutes for questions and answers. So we'll see how people have been participating. Let's show it. Yeah. There we go. How many questions we have? Can we see that? Oh, wow. Excellent. Okay, so now you see on the screen we have a rated list of questions. So I would propose we try to move from top to the bottom, and you don't have to worry because the questions that remain unanswered today will be taken for tomorrow for a learning coffee. So all the questions that remain there will still be answered probably tomorrow. Okay? So I will read the questions, and then we'll see who will take the microphone first. Okay? The first question, which got, we have actually two with 4 votes. Tenure security is 1. What else are ingredients to generate a dynamic of sustainable landscape? Oh, sorry, it changed now. No, okay. Sustainable landscape management or landscape restoration. I think it goes in Anne's direction, if I may suggest. Would you like to pick up should I read it again, Anne? Okay. Tenure security is 1. What else are ingredients to generate a dynamic of sustainable landscape management or landscape restoration? So what is beyond the tenure rights?
So is this working? Yeah, okay. So security is one, and that's a big one, because again, it's not just a piece of paper, it's all the things that go with that, right? Sustainable landscape management. Okay, so I don't have any magic answers here, but certainly the points I mentioned earlier. I mean, the participation, the security element, the participation element, the ability to exercise rights and address the problem of livelihoods. So I think that I'll just focus on two issues. One is the importance of taking on board what it is that local people understand, what they want to do in terms of defining their own futures. I think this is really key, and that's really what I was talking about earlier around multi-stakeholder approaches and engaging with people in the landscape. I think that there is, as I mentioned earlier, the problem of urgency, sort of tending to push things through that aren't necessarily going to be sustainable in the long term because they're not addressing the desires, needs, customs, et cetera, of local people. So that's one. And the other is that in any approach needs to be addressing local livelihoods. I think it's time to really face the problem of coercive conservation on the one hand, and landscape approaches on the other that are, again, moving ahead without local people and without taking into account the possibilities, the potential that local people have to manage the landscape for their own economic benefits. One of the things I didn't get to say earlier because I didn't have time, there's a really good review of community forestry that covers a number of initiatives. Community forestry is one term, but I think it takes into account many things that are similar to what we're talking about around restoration and forest management and landscapes. And one of the key findings is that secure tenure is needed as a necessary condition, but so is the ability of people to derive an income that is reasonably well distributed from whatever initiative is happening. So I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Anna. Anybody else would like to add something to that question? What is beyond land tenure? Yes?
Par rapport à cette question sur la sécurité foncière, il a noté que l'accès à la terre est un moyen d'abord pour sécuriser l'occupant en le devenant en tant que propriétaire après l'obtention d'une preuve de droit de propriété. Avec ce document, il sera stable, il sera prêt à exploiter le terrain, à continuer son occupation, à l'exploiter, que ce soit pour les moyens de subsistance ou autres. Et à part ça, avec ce document de propriété, il est plus facile pour lui d'engager des investissements à titre privé ou pour avoir d'autres revenus pour sa famille ou pour la communauté. Et le document de propriété peut aussi être un moyen pour avoir les prêts bancaires, les prêts auprès de microfinances qui vont appuyer justement le propriétaire à exploiter le terrain, à mettre en valeur les terrains, donc à restaurer le paysage dans un premier temps. Merci.
Thank you for that contribution. So we have a new winner, and I'll quickly read the question. It says, I agree. We need to do more than speak pretty words at a conference. What are a few key takeaways to turn this conversation into action? I think this goes in direction of Sonia. Sonia, would you like to did you get the question? Otherwise I could. É bom falar assim palavras bonitas na conferência, mas o que tem que fazer de verdade?
Bom, nós nunca deixamos de fazer, né? Que é fazer a luta, fazer a resistência. esse ano, por exemplo, né, a gente fez, desde o dia 1º de janeiro, a gente realizou uma agenda que chamou Agenda Janeiro Vermelho e lançamos uma campanha Sangue Indígena, Nenhuma Gota a Mais. Realizamos o acampamento Terra Livre, que mesmo com todas as ameaças e tentativas, né, de não deixarem a gente instalar o acampamento, a gente instalou, para fazer essa luta, né, em defesa dos direitos. Porque, para a gente conseguir fazer hoje, de verdade, nós temos um governo aí no meio que atrapalha, né, e a gente precisa enfrentar. Enfrentar para a gente garantir que, de fato, tenha um uso responsável da terra, né, e que essa descentralização precisa acontecer. Do mesmo jeito que a gente luta hoje pela distribuição de renda, né, a igualdade na distribuição de renda, nós temos que lutar também pela democratização do uso da terra e uma distribuição igual para todas as pessoas do campo, né. Então, claro que ninguém acho que tem a resposta pronta, mas o momento hoje exige de nós muita luta.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to add something to that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the point that I should add is we hear several good promisings at meetings like this, or local meetings at the official levels. But very little of those promises will really go down to the root level, the grassroots level, to implement promises that are said at that higher level. And I think we need more commitments at the grassroots level where action should be taken, from verbal promises to actual actions at the level where the participation of the communities is much needed and much relevant to take place. And we need to be stronger at that level. I think that's the point I wanted to add.
Thank you. Okay. We have a question. I think Mr. Worm will have to return to the podium. So how is Germany supposed to be taken serious, helping to try implementing these rights-based approaches in foreign countries if it isn't able to protect its own landscapes and does not listen to the concerns of its citizens? For example, Hambacher Forest. Yeah, it's automatic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, it's on.
Also for this question, it's a very interesting, question which shows that we have here in Germany, I think, very similar discussions and very similar cleavages like we have them in our partner countries. Yeah, why should it be here different than there? We have, of course, different interests. Some are environmentally very friendly and very environmentally oriented, and others have other interests. Yeah, so this is what you can see. We have a Ministry of Environment, we have a Ministry of Agriculture, we have a Ministry of Development Cooperation. So I am from the BMZ, which is the Ministry of Development Cooperation, and of course our interest is to support partner countries and communities to protect land rights, etc. But also we want to improve living conditions of people living there, and this has so many different facets of it. Yeah, and I also think that so this is one aspect of the answer, but the other one is that it's a very sort of negatively formulated question, because of course Germany is also doing a lot of protection for its environment and for landscapes. It is not that we just have this Hambacher Forst example, which of course is not a very positive example of environmental policy in Germany, but we have national parks, we have natural resources in Germany, and we have a very vivid green movement in Germany. That's what I would say. Yeah. So it's not either this or that. I think it has to be very looked at more differentiated. Yeah.
Thank you. Would any of the panelists would like to add something about Yeah? Okay. It's on. It's on. Yeah.
Lo que ustedes mencionan esa pregunta es muy importante. Eso pasa en Perú. En Perú, el Ministerio del Ambiente capacita a los indígenas diciendo hay que proteger el bosque, cabeceras de ríos, el medio ambiente, y hay que crear áreas protegidas para proteger. Pero sin embargo, el otro ministerio, que es el Ministerio de Energía y Minas, dice hay que sacar oro porque el interés nacional es sacar oro. Entonces, el mismo Estado también se contradice. El Estado peruano se ha comprometido en conservar 54 millones de hectáreas de bosque y no lo está cumpliendo, y no sé si lo va a cumplir. Gracias.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move to the next one. I agree. How can we recognize? Okay, so how can we recognize indigenous land rights in adverse political contexts when formal institutions are going in the opposite direction? I guess anybody could pick up on that. I guess it's directed to Sonia. Sonia, como a gente pode proteger os direitos da terra em ambiente político hostil, ambiente político difícil?
Bom, não tem como desistir, né? Porque o que está em jogo é a nossa vida. Então, embora tenha governos que não reconheçam, que não respeitam, nós temos que lutar pelo cumprimento desse direito, porque hoje toda luta que a gente faz tem um respaldo legal. Nós temos uma Constituição Federal, nós temos os tratados internacionais que garante o direito territorial aos povos indígenas, né? Que, inclusive, dá o direito à demarcação dessas terras. Então, nós precisamos, né, seguir lutando pelo cumprimento desse direito constitucional. Embora a gente sabe que o direito à demarcação das terras indígenas é um direito originário. Ele é muito antes da Constituição. Mas, como está escrito, né, é mais um respaldo legal para a gente fazer a luta. E as pessoas precisam entender isso, né? Não basta porque um governo está dizendo que não pode ou que não é, isso é as pessoas aceitar silenciosamente, né?
Thank you. Anybody else would like to contribute to that? How can we protect land rights in a difficult political situation? No? Okay. So the next question, I think it might be the last one, and don't worry, tomorrow we can continue with the other questions that are not answered today. So tenure security is one. No, I read already. I think the next one, did you find engaging with local context took more time? If so, how do we encourage initiatives with minimal time and project deliverables to take the time to do this? I'll read it again. Did you find engaging with local context took more time? Maybe to Dr. Tesfaye, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's obvious, and from the very beginning, we should take the understanding that it is not easy to convince people from their traditional way of doing things. So continuous dialogue and the engagement of the community will shorten the time that is required to bring the required change, I think. And we don't need to lose patience until we really are successful in transforming some of the views we think is good for the sustainable management of the land with the communities at least, and appreciating their traditional way of doing things as well. I think one of the problems of engaging the community is we tend most of the time to tell them what to do instead of learning and understanding why they do things in the way they do, and in contributing knowledge to their way of doing in a way that they appreciate the change. And we don't need to impose the so-called educated or modern technologies on the way of the traditional doing of things of the community. So if we are care in communicating our message to them in the way they understand and appreciate, I think it's not a big deal to bring that required change, in my view. Of course, it takes time. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, please.
So the second half of the question is so how do you take the time when you have project deliverables? And there, I think we need to convince the donors that short-term timelines and short-term deliverables and so-called impacts aren't enough. We have had this in the past. We've had funding for long-term engagement. I think we're in a phase of really looking for short-term impacts, but I don't think that in reality we're getting what we really need. And I think we still need that long-term engagement. We need goals, obviously. We need to be bringing about change, but I'm not sure that the way we're doing it now is the way it's going to happen.
Mr. Wong, would you like to add something to that?
I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking about the right answer. I don't think there is a right answer, but when it comes to this short-term projects, and I think this is right, that very often we request, or at least this is what I see at in our at BMZ, that we often request results fast, without taking into consideration what kind of restoration, that it takes a very long time, yeah, to build up a landscape, to restore, but the other thing is that these are somehow also constraints in which a government works. There is the annual household, there is the legislation period in which results have to be achieved. So it is actually difficult to, not constantly, but sometimes it is difficult also to have this long-term perspective on it. Yeah, it is, but we work on it. We try to have second phases or third phases of projects. Yeah, but it is sometimes not always possible.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have answered some of the questions. There are other questions that will remain unanswered today, but we are going to focus on those tomorrow. I believe that the presentations and the speeches have covered a great deal of substance, and I think, I hope you agreed with me that we have covered all the questions that we initially posted that were related to the approaches on the landscape approaches and tenure rights and how do they come together, about incentives and also about the challenges that we face. I will now give the floor to the last contribution by Anne, she will try to wrap up this enormous amount of substance. So, yeah, I do.
Thank you. I completely forgot that I was supposed to do the wrap-up. Fortunately, we wrote some key messages earlier, so I'll refer to those. So first of all, I just want to say, I think that this conference is really interesting because it really is a meeting place between kind of, I'm not critically using the word, but the technocracy of development to some extent and the activists. And I think we have a lot to talk about. I think there are two different visions, and I think it's really challenging, but it's also really interesting, and I hope that we can move this dialogue forward. So some of our key messages coming out of the discussion today: sustainable development, sustainable landscape management and restoration must be based on a pluralistic approach of tenure security, according to the historical and current conditions of each region and country. In Latin America, indigenous collective land rights have been recognized in the constitutions of almost every country, but their formalization depends on the political will of the governments, and this is currently facing serious setbacks in several countries. In Africa, individual land titles are as important as collective and traditional land rights and must be balanced, taking into account traditional management and use resource systems. The continuum of land rights provides an appropriate strategic orientation. Government plays a central role in recognizing and guaranteeing the security of land tenure rights, as well as in landscape investment and management. Hence, networking and mobilization may be important to foster political will for recognizing rights, to defend customary lands and territory, and promote sustainable development alternatives. I think that's all for now.
Thank you. So I would like to thank all of you. It was great work. We're actually ahead of time, and that is not very common in this kind of events. So thank you so much for participating. Thank you to everybody who was here too. And please don't forget, tomorrow we will continue these discussions with some of these panelists too, and we will be focusing on some of the questions that remained unanswered. So thank you so much for coming, and enjoy the coffee.